Hey, Aaron. So it turns out you just got back from a secret mission at Bungie. So you got all these fun details to share with me and the rest of our community. Tell us what you saw.
Yeah, we got to play through a lot of Forsaken, and there is so much Destiny in this Destiny this time around. A lot of people were hoping that this would be the Taken King-size DLC for Destiny 2, the one that revitalized everything and tweaked weapons and added a ton of new areas. We spent a day with it, and it feels like it's definitely that size, possibly larger. Now, just for folks out there, we played a lot of content, but we were only allowed to capture some of it, and all that I can show you while we're having this conversation is the first couple of story missions and exploring the Tangled Shore. So my apologies, I won't actually be able to show you a lot of what we're talking about, but bear with us and we'll get through as much as we can without breaking embargoes. But the game's out today, so you'll be able to play through a lot of this yourself after you listen to us.
So, Aaron, you mentioned, being able to show some of the campaign. Tell us a little bit about, your experience with the campaign. How's the story this time around? We kind of know, this story is kind of set around a revenge story in a sense that, we're doing this for Cade, and, my hope is that somehow we revive Cade, but, it looks like the man's pretty dead, and it's kind of scary, actually, because I thought about it, and I was like, dude, Cade's probably one of the best characters that's in Destiny 2. So killing him off kind of scares me.
It is really risky for them to kill off one of their best characters in the game, particularly because storytelling has not always been Bungie's strong suit. They're fantastic writers. Like, the Grimoire is great, and the lore tabs are great, but killing off the one character that's really entertaining is a risk. And we already know he's dead from publicly available trailers. The star of the show of the first couple hours, because you already know what happens, is really where it takes place. Forsaken really builds on the Reef and the Prison of Elders, and without getting too specific, it knows what you've already done if you played through House of Wolves, and it kind of plays off of your expectations of what's going to happen in a way that'll make you feel very nostalgic, and also messes with kind of what you expect to happen at certain times. All I can say is that you get into the inner workings of the Prison of Elders, like going under the Roman Colosseum and seeing what the gladiators were doing, before they got lifted up to their deaths. And also there's a lot of story elements in the Tangled Shore. You get to explore some of the cultures of the Fallen. So they've always been, they've mostly been enemies. They were allies to the Queen. And you get to dig into them a lot more. Like Spider is your quest giver. He's like the sheriff in town. And he sends you through your first exploration of the Tangled Shore, coming off the main story. So one important thing to talk about is the grind. The story starts, at the preview event, we started at about 380. And so anybody who's at 380, you should easily be able to get through the first part of the story. The Tangled Shore went up to about 500 power level. And then, hunting barons took you also up to about to a point in the 500 range where you couldn't do it, and you'd probably have to go do something else for a while.
Okay, so you kind of get capped in a way. So, it seems like it has pretty good progression in terms of, okay, you're going to start story at, whatever light you're at now, roughly, right? Like you said, you started around 380. Then, as you progress through the story, it seems like it gets you to the point where, as the Tangled Shore opens up, it pretty much gives you everything you need to do to get to that 500 softish cap that then you're going off to another area, so to speak? Yeah,
so we played in the Dreaming City, although I am under embargo, can't talk about it. But again, we can talk about these things later today when people get there. Our embargo is we can talk about the Dreaming City when we get to the Dreaming City. I'll say that it's definitely above the light level of Tangled Shore, and it's another high-level exploration zone. To be vague, there's a lot of exploring to do in the second zone. And also, they've already talked about the Blind Well and shown some footage of it, but that's another place for you to grind and progress. I can say that it's very similar to the Court of Oryx. It's larger, but I don't want to get into specifics just yet about what you do there.
Okay, and I guess I didn't ask you this, but how big would you say the Tangled Shore is, like relative to kind of some of these planets that we've been exploring? Is it kind of like big, or is it like medium size? Like what planet would you kind of mirror that off of, if you could?
So the Tangled Shore is, I would say, a medium-sized map. It's a bunch of asteroids lashed together. I believe it had about 5 zones to it. There's a lot of stuff under it, too. There's prison cells. There's lost sectors. There's mines. We definitely saw story-gated content. Like there was a fallen skiff that clearly like crossed a chasm that I couldn't get to without the fallen skiff. So I'm assuming this will all be part of the story. The story actually takes place on the Tangled Shore. So it does that thing where you get story and cutscene, and then you have to go grind for a while, and then you get story and cutscene, and you grind for a while. But yeah, I would say as planets go, it's about medium-sized, and the, again, being big, the Dreaming City was large. It was definitely felt much bigger than the Tangled Shore.
Okay, so unfortunately, as you mentioned, like we can't really speak to that yet. We'll probably speak more to it once we kind of see it ourselves. But that seems to be the late game, sans the raid, right? Also, I guess during the preview, were you able to fight some of the new enemies? I think is it the Scorn?
Yeah, the Scorn were really interesting. They're not massively different from other races. I mean, they're fallen who have been corrupted by corrupted ether. But they have a lot of specialized movesets that tend to push you around the map. So in Destiny 1, I feel like a lot of the design, which Forsaken kind of draws influence from, was there to pit you with minimal cover against things that just had like a power or a light level, and you had your power and light level, and if they didn't match up, you were kind of screwed. So I was worried that this was mirroring that philosophy, but there's a lot of cover in this DLC, so you can move and fight and be creative with your new abilities. There's like 9 new subclass trees. Some of them are support abilities. So when you go toe-to-toe with the Scorn, a lot of what they do is mess with your space. So they either run at you and explode, but they're more aggressive, but the explosions are smaller than the Thrall.
Okay.
So they're easier to dodge, but they happen more often. Then there's ones that'll run up and swing fire lanterns at you and put down small area denial sections. There's ones that will spawn traps that'll actually trap you in and burn you. There's a really standout one that floats around the map as mist, and then appears and takes sniper shots at you, and then like floats off again. And it more or less seems to be invulnerable in the mist state, but it looks so cool. Like when you see it happen, it's impressive to look at. And then there's this like funny little dude with a shield. It's like a small gladiator shield, and you just kneecap him all day, and that takes him down.
Man, I hope he's not like a Phalanx. Phalanxes are literally the worst because they essentially almost have super armor, and they're just a pain in the butt. So I hope this guy is not a pain in the butt, but it'll be fine.
They also redid some enemies you've fought for a while, like Fallen Walkers have some new movesets. They have a flamethrower, which kind of keeps you from getting too close, but then when they go into their vulnerable state, they put up a shield, so you can no longer just snipe them with your Whisper of the Worm or Polaris Lance.
Sucks.
Yeah, you got to actually work with your team now and run in to hit the crit spot when it goes into vulnerable state.
So Shotgun City. Got it.
You can have 3 shotguns if you want. So tying into that is the new exotics. We got to play with the Malfeasance hand cannon, which a lot of people affectionately compare to the Needler.
Oh, okay.
And being a Warlock, I was also playing with Chromatic Fire, which was cool because Malfeasance was in my kinetic slot, and Chromatic Fire makes anything in your kinetic slot make elemental explosions on crit, like headshots.
Yep.
So Malfeasance already makes everything explode after 5 hits, and then this exotic chest piece also made everything explode on critical headshots. So basically a lot of shit exploded while I was shooting at it. It was a really good ads clearing weapon or like setup. And I think a lot of this DLC is based around you coming up with creative loadouts. On the flip side of that is you can come up with bad loadouts. So because the Scorn are so aggressive, carrying 2 shotguns is actually a bad idea or like a shotgun and a hand cannon without an armor piece that makes you reload faster. Because if you have a lot of downtime in between reloads, the Scorn will probably get you while you're reloading, and you can screw up and build a bad loadout.
Yeah, I mean that is part of the fun and interesting thing. I mean, like it's been out for a week now, but it's still taking getting used to, obviously. And It's always interesting to see how the meta changes, you know. So I am excited about the potential for, you know, weapons like Malfeasance and, you know, just seeing what the next best legendary is. But you also got to play around with some of the new superpowers. Why don't you tell me something about that? Because I think you mainly played Warlock, right, this time around?
Yeah, so I only had time really to mess with Warlock. But I will say that Titan also has some good support abilities, and those are important in some of the higher level content for you to be able to go toe to toe with things. We were in a place where we were actually fighting things 50 power levels above us.
Okay.
And we succeeded for a while relying on some of these new abilities. But the Warlock has a couple of interesting ones. They're more tweaks on the existing powers than full, I don't know, giant new ideas. So the Voidwalker has the Nova Warp, which is really cool. It's basically lets you be a Nova Bomb, and it's much more strategic. Rather than just one big explosion, you get to make a lot of little explosions, and you control how big those explosions are. It's like being able to divide up your Nova Bomb how you want to divide it up, rather than just throw it once and either do what you meant to do or say whoops and then have to wait for it to come back again. But it also has a teleporter, which is really cool. Because, again, this game has a lot of exploration, and some of the enemies were way above our level. And we used it to just teleport past things that were too high level for us. And
interesting.
Explore beyond them in the map. So it's kind of a fun way to get an advanced look at things that you otherwise couldn't fight. I know that the Hunter also can basically just go invisible for long periods of time now.
So like old school.
Yeah. The Stormcaller's Chaos Reach was probably the least impressive of the bunch. That poor electric lightning has just never been all that impressive. It's good at little guys. And this just basically channels it all into one direct energy beam that's long range. And it took care of regular yellows, but when you hit a big boss, it didn't feel like it did that much. So that one was okay. I don't know, I feel like Stormcaller's always been just very situational. It's only
it's definitely it's been a little bit better, but like you said, it's specifically for ad clear and things like that. It's really strong at ad clear. If you combo it with Crown of Tempest, it makes it last longer. So then you can just, for certain raid things and public events or something like that, you can just clear all the stuff out. It's not necessarily the most DPS to a boss. I don't think it ever has been, but it's nice to have options, obviously.
And then Dawnblade's Well of Radiance is the one where you plant the sword in the ground and you get a buff to yourself and your team, anybody within the well. That was the one that I originally thought was the least interesting, and it ended up being, it just turns the Warlock into a tank, just a damage-soaking tank. It was incredible. There was one point where we were getting burned by an environmental mechanic, shot by a boss directly, and hit by all the adds around, and we just stood there practically invulnerable and took care of business. It's definitely up there with the older Titan bubble in my mind in terms of your ability to just soak damage. But unlike the Titan bubble, this time with the Well of Radiance, you can keep firing out of it. So it would take... The only thing that really dislodged us from it was when bosses did a stomp.
If you get punted out of it or punted up or something like that.
Yeah.
Did you, because I don't know that much about the ability, but is it basically a stronger rift?
That's exactly what it is. It's just
Does it give you both empowering and healing rift though?
I believe it gives you both. Plus, you can also use your regular rift. So if you have two, in the case I'm talking about, we actually had two Warlocks who both dropped Well of Radiance and their regular rifts at the same time. So basically anybody inside of that vortex of awesomeness outputted a ton more damage and could soak a ton of damage. And it almost lets you get around some of the mechanics of the game. So yeah, I think it's going to be one of the fan favorites when it comes to doing any sort of hard activities in the game.
Yeah, it sounds really cool just to have more of a support option, like a true support super.
Yeah.
And like you said, I think it'll be interesting to see how that works out for, obviously it's going to be really good in the raid. It's probably a must-have, I would think, unless it's a mobile fight. And it sounds like something I'd probably be running for like strikes and nightfalls too, because like chances are, a Titan or a Hunter is going to have other good supers to like, either add clear or kill the boss. And, maybe with like Whisper and you're just chilling in your... Although that could break it. I don't know. We'll see.
All right, so to wrap this up, Raid comes out 10 days after launch. We had a QA session where the devs basically said they expected an average person would be able to unlock 2 new subclass trees in that amount of time. And they designed it so that the grind takes 10 days. That's what they claimed, it takes 10 days. So you have more time to get ready for the raid, but they also feel like they designed it so that you'll need that time to get ready for the raid. My guess is they want you to actually engage with all the other content first.
Or you can look at it as them kind of finding a way to gate people from, getting through their stuff too fast. Now, granted, haven't seen the game in full yet, so if there's a lot of cool stuff to explore, I don't mind that. I don't mind kind of soaking in all that stuff that they've kind of put in place of us to try and to explore and to actually get to that level, because then, yeah, you do feel a little bit more accomplished when you've kind of spent 10 days and got like I think I'm raid ready, and then realize I'm probably still not raid ready, outside of like the small 5% of those people that are really going to min-max it. But I'm hoping when they say that like most people will be ready by 10 days, that they're kind of aiming more towards like your average player, maybe not a casual player, but somewhere in between, because that would be good, I think, 1, and 2, at least they've come forward and already said like, hey, if you do challenging things, they're going to reward you for doing challenging things, right? So it'll be really fun to watch, at least for me, the people trying to get world firsts and things like that, because they have brought cool new systems forward. Like you're gonna have like those special like names, and everyone's gonna see like you're the special person that did this and that, and then also I guess if you're super like the 3 to 5%, you're gonna have like some really sick raid gear that some people might not have in 10 days. But
and on the flip side of that, people who don't raid in Destiny have a high level zone, the Dreaming City, that it's the equivalent for those folks. So they'll be able to explore that zone and fight high level enemies without having to have a crew to fight with. And there's also just a lot of secrets in that zone. Again, can't go into specifics until later today, but there's a lot to do for both people who love to raid and for people who just love to stop and smell the roses and explore areas. It just feels like there's a ton of secrets. And we haven't even gotten into, we did not see or haven't gotten into the other realms that are kind of around the Dreaming City that they've talked about in the Vidoc. I mean, there's literally entire other realities kind of around that map. And we don't quite know how you'll get into them yet. I think Game Informer talked about one that you only get 1 shot a week to get into, and with 1 life. So I'm really looking forward to this DLC and kind of the long play that it's making, because we don't really know when the next Destiny is even going to happen. Yeah,
I mean, they've already, that it won't happen for a year, that's for sure, because they've already pretty much shown us a roadmap of here's a year worth of DLC. So I don't expect Destiny 3 anytime soon. I'm really hoping that with Forsaken, it is like that Taken King sized, DLC expansion, because it is $40, of course, which is, double, like the equivalent of 2 DLCs, right? So, but, last time I could at least say, with Taken King, that was a really good expansion and one that people should come and play if you had fallen off. I'm hoping that's the same for Forsaken.
And in real talk, I think we're probably going to play this on and off over the next year. We'll probably walk away and go play Division 2 and go play Anthem. And I think you can do that pretty guilt-free. This is a very large DLC from what we saw, and you'll have, they have their season pass, but you'll have the next year to just get through it at your own pace. And also play other hot titles that you want to play. I feel like this gives you a lot of room to do that, and that's really cool in my mind. All right, awesome. So that was our preview for Forsaken. You guys will be basically playing playing Forsaken if you bought it by the time you hear this. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on this DLC, whether you feel like it's going to keep your attention over the next year, if you think it delivered on the Taken King-sized DLC promise. Let's talk about it in the comments below, and thanks for watching, everyone.